might be times when I don't get the right thing.
Okay. That's fine. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Thank goodness. I said technology is built not equipment, right? I mean, they are, but we want to offer this. They have like all the time. So the person who's responsible for
I think
and then just bringing that up. Good morning. I'm sorry to be here. Thanks for coming. I get we haven't gone live yet. watch now on the
Okay. So I can go ahead and
Okay, good morning, everyone. We're going to get started out of respect for everyone's time, even though at the moment we do not have a quorum in person. This is our first meeting in person since the pandemic began. I just want to thank everyone who came here today and who is on the phone. Also, thanks to those who will.
Sarah, can you speak up?
Thanks to those who. Thanks also to those who may watch the live stream or a video recording. We have an attendance sheet going around, and I'm going to just ask the commissioners to go around and quickly introduce themselves, if you will, starting to my right. Eve.
Is that the mic on?
Your mic was on?
Is that working? Okay. Good morning. I'm Eve Barron, and I'm the appointee of the Brooklyn Borough President.
Good morning. I'm Mark Giller. I'm the appointee.
Can you bring the mic down a little? Yeah.
I had it down before. That's when that's causing the mischief. I don't know.
It was your cell phone.
Good morning, I'm Donna Gill, one of the mayor's appointees.
Ourselves, so if you could introduce yourself. Thank you, Michael. Mark, do you want to try again?
Third time's a charm. I'm Mark Diller. I'm an appointee of the Manhattan Borough President. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And for folks on the phone, would you please introduce yourself, starting with Anastasia?
Hi, this is Anastasia. We're just saying our names.
you can say your appointee or your appointee from.
I'm one of Council Speaker Corey Johnson's appointees to the Civic Engagement Commission.
Amy Breedlove's mayor's appointment.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Annette Attrition, and I'm a mayoral appointee.
Okay, so is there anyone else on the phone right now? Okay, great. Just for the record, my name is Sarah Saeed, and my name is Sarah Saeed, and I am the Chair and Executive Director of the Civic Engagement Commission. I just want to note that today we do not have a quorum in person. So this cannot be considered an official meeting under the open meeting law. We do have commissioners who are dialing in, and also dial-in participation for public awareness does not count towards meeting quorum. And we certainly hope that the open meeting law will be updated in order to ensure maximum participation and transparency going forward. We are also live streaming, again, under the open meeting law. However, because this is not a quorum, we're technically not required to live stream. But we're going to go ahead and share our meeting with the public. I just want to note also that we do have in every meeting the last half hour reserved for public comment. If there are members of the public here, I think there are, and if you already have not signed up for public comment, we ask you to do that by 12 p.m. And the way that we usually do this is that we call on people who have signed up before today to comment first, and then we call on people in the order they signed up in person. So because we do not have a quorum, we cannot vote on the minutes. So I am going to go ahead on the agenda and see where we are later if we do have a quorum later in the meeting. So we're just going to begin with our updates, as usual, to the programs that we've been doing. And the deck is behind me. So I guess I'm going to turn around. And we're going to begin with the Pulsite Language Assistance Program. So as you all know, we served in the primary this past June, and we served 2 days of early voting, 25 sites per day in the last weekend of early voting. We also had religious accommodation for the Yiddish-speaking community in deference to Shabbat. Rather than serving on Saturday, as we did for other languages, we served that community on Friday and Sunday. And then on Election Day, we had 52 sites. We also were engaged in promoting ranked choice voter education through translated ads and also on our Participate platform. And one of the great stats that we learned about is that before May 24th, before our ads started, the platform had about 300 visits per week. And then once the ads started running, it jumped up to 2,950 visits in the last week of May. And then in the first week of June, it had over 11,000 visits. So a lot of those visits were to the voting center that was established on the Participate platform. It included early voting, know your rights, and ranked choice voting PSAs that our team helped to pull together and get up on that platform in a very, very tight timeline. So one of the great developments that I also want to share is that we will be able to scale up our operations for November and serve more poll sites to add another 50 poll sites. And luckily, we also just got good news recently that we got approval for additional staff to support the scaled up operations. So we have another line, a second line to support the poll site program and also 2 outreach lines to support the commission overall. We do have hand in hand with this, so we can go to the next slide. I just also wanted to note that given where we are in the administration, a lot of people are moving around, so we also have had some staff attrition. So Gagan Kaur, who used to run the poll site program, is no longer with us. Daniel Abramson, who did comms and IGA, is also no longer with us. So CEC is going to be in the process of, hiring the staff that we lost, as well as hiring on the new lines, and we definitely want to onboard people as soon as possible, particularly for the elections program as well. So that is our update on poll site work. And then, I was hoping that we'd have some numbers in here, but I guess we didn't fill them in. So we had held 2 trainings in the past couple of weeks. One was on parliamentary procedures and committees and how committees function. And we also did a training on how to run efficient meetings. I will update these numbers and get them to you later. And then we also, I'm very interested in how we as a commission can put community boards more on the public's radar, how we can make them more aware of what's happening, in the community boards vis-a-vis budget, because we do have, the CEC has been given the mandate to work on participatory budgeting, and that is one way, an important way that people can have say in the budget. There are also other avenues of influence on the city budget, and one of those is community boards. So I think we need to just let people know how they can connect to that pathway of influence as well. Right now, community boards are preparing in September to meet with agencies to discuss agency priorities, agency constraints, also community priorities, borough priorities, and citywide priorities. And these are dialogues that happen every year between community boards and city agencies. And I'm not sure, how many people in the public are connected to these conversations or even aware. And then these conversations between community boards and agencies are the basis for budget requests that community boards make. And those budget requests are submitted through the Department of City Planning on a portal that's been set up for community boards to do this. And boards are required to hold public hearings in October related to their budget submissions. So we want to get people to participate, be aware and participate in these conversations. So I just wanted to mention that as well. Yeah. Just press the button.
Okay. I have a question. Would it be helpful if our commission meets with the district managers on a borough-by-borough basis to make them aware of what the services that the commission would have with them as they go through the budgetary process for the future? Have you ever done that before by bringing in the district managers?
We haven't. We have met with the district managers in different settings and had different kinds of conversations with them. We haven't. What we did last year in terms of the agency consultations is we attended and listened in on the kinds of conversations that were happening between agencies and community boards. And we'll do that again. We haven't, I guess if you could explain a little bit more what you're hoping we could cover in terms of the budget consultation.
Well, I am looking at a larger picture over the next years where the district managers, as we all know by charter, relate more to the borough president than the mayor in day-to-day and payroll and everything else. And I'm just wondering if there's a role that we could play guiding the district managers, in their operation as it relates to their interaction with the city.
meeting.
Sorry, I missed that last part.
What I'm saying is that to engage the district managers more with the mayor's umbrella and with this office to support them in their activities in their districts.
That's an interesting idea. Does anyone have suggestions or feedback on that?
Yeah. I think that we need to be a little bit careful about the demands on their time because there's already a robust process, at least in Manhattan, there's a robust process by which these budget consultations that take place at the Office of Management and Budget in coordination with the Department of City Planning, which is of course the portal in which you input what you come up with at these consultations. But the planning work for the consultation starts happening in the late spring. And it's generally done by mid-July or end of July because the district managers and a variety of board members as well come up with a series of questions for each participating agency and submit them weeks in advance with the hope that the agencies will then prepare answers and either have them in writing and with data in advance of or at these consultations. So the consultation is an opportunity to ask follow-up questions and so forth. So if you wanted to have input into or be available to the district managers in a meaningful way for the budget consultation process, you would need to start in the early to mid-spring when the district managers and other interested folks are putting their heads together as to what the questions should be. For example, in Manhattan this year, a lot of the work that's being done by district managers has to do with what have we learned from COVID, what got put on the shelf because of COVID, and where are the priorities about emerging from and recovering from. While those meetings are coming up in the next couple of weeks, the work for it has already largely been set, And if we were to be a resource to them in that process, I think we would look to next year's system rather than trying to jump in at the last minute this year.
Mark, I didn't mean to jump on the process and the calendar. What I'm saying is to enhance the mandate that this board has to look towards the future, which could be next spring. There's a new mayor coming January 1st, to make them more engaging with us in the overall process besides budgeting. But there are many other things that we can help facilitate, for the district managers to be able to interact with city agencies outside of what they would normally do. So I'm looking at a longer term, not a most immediate one, tomorrow, for this commission to be more involved with the district managers as they engage in civic and decision making, whether it be from the community planning position or budgeting or anything else that goes on in the community. Because when the mayor goes out into the neighborhood, he's the one that gets beaten up on anything from a pothole to a water issue or to a major real estate development. And maybe we could play a role, because that's part of our charter, is to be involved with the community boards, besides just guide them on a budgetary process. And maybe there's larger issues that we can be of help by having a discussion this coming year, the remaining of the year, to look towards the future.
Donna, you had a comment?
Okay, so I listened to both sides, and it's actually accurate. Being on the community board, Mark is correct. We've done all this process in the spring. However, Michael, I understand what you're saying is that we need to make a connection to the district managers and the community boards to let them know that we are a resource.
Correct.
To assist them. So I think you both are talking about the same thing, but the process of budgeting is already done, more or less. Mm-hmm. But the information and the introduction of us through to the communities is what's needed.
Yes.
And I'm thinking that's Michael's point.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense from the civic engagement mission and our point of view. I think we have two charges here. One charge is to the district managers and community board members to help them be able to do their work better, right? So if there are opportunities for us to strengthen the capacity of community board members to participate in these conversations, and I don't know what those are, and I don't know if that involves like trainings, or I'm not sure. I mean, I know that the district managers have they communicate a lot with agencies on behalf of the boards. I'm not sure how much board members are understanding those conversations, and so like maybe helping them increase fluency in that space is good for us to do. And then also, big picture, I think the whole purpose of why we're trying to strengthen community boards is because we want to have the public participate more in board meetings and just become more aware. So I think there's my purpose in raising this today is also just to say that we need to educate the public about what is even happening in this space. So I think we could definitely can explore like what are the ways that we can work with district managers and boards in this conversation. So we can start talking with them.
Yeah, I think it's also helps us get our message that we are available and explaining to the public as well as the DMs, who we are and what we can do. So it goes both ways. It's listening to them, but them listening to us and what we can support them with.
Right. Yes. So thank you for that feedback, and that's an interesting idea. So I'm going to keep us moving, and we're going to go to participatory budgeting next. So I'm going to ask Daniela Eras, who's the advisor at the CEC for participatory budgeting, to take us through a couple of the slides and let you know what happened with the process we ran for $100,000 during the pandemic. So Daniela, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I don't know which way was faster, that way or this way. My name is Daniela Aras. I'm an advisor at the Civic Engagement Commission. And as you all know, we worked on New York City's first youth-led participatory budgeting process last year, and we actually culminated the initiative earlier this month. The last update that we provided to the commissioners was the results of the initiative. So over 3,400 New York City youth participated in the initiative, participated and voted, and collectively casted over 8,000 votes to vote for, to select 5 projects that received a total of $100,000 in funding from the Civic Engagement Commission. I'm here to discuss what happened after the vote and how the projects were implemented and the results of the project implementation. So after we selected the winning organizations that received the funding, the community-based organizations met monthly with us to discuss progress and to hear feedback from them on how the implementation was going and if there were any issues that we could help. The organizations carried out their planned activities from March of 2021 until August 1st of this year. One of the requirements that we put in the process was that if organizations won funding for their projects, they needed to be ready to move forward with implementation and wrap up by June 30th. June 30th, July 1st. After the vote, we also held 2 youth-led focus groups to discuss what went well, what did youth like about the process, what could we do better for future similar processes. The concluding meeting of the initiative was held earlier this month. And a final report will be also ready by August 30th. And that will just be a summary of what happened start to finish. As a reminder, youth were involved in every stage in the process, from designing the program, designing how the process would look like, doing the facilitation of the what in traditional in PB we know as neighborhood assemblies. They became virtual assemblies because all the activities were online. And after collecting reports from all the winning organizations, we found out that these 5 projects served over and engaged over 125 youth from all 5 boroughs in the city. So over 125 youth benefited from the projects that were directly funded. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what the projects were and what they were able to accomplish. So the project that won first place, the Green Space Project, which the sponsoring organization was YVO in Brooklyn. YVO is actually an organization that's fully dedicated to engaging youth in advocacy and civic engagement. So this was one of the projects, one of many projects that were actually proposed by youth and submitted in the process. So their vision for this project was to create a rooftop garden in a high school in an underserved community in Brooklyn. And one of the most interesting things that we learned in this project was that the executive director told us that youth were actually, instead of focusing on the lessons of urban gardening and urban planning, they also learned advocacy and how things get done in New York City government, because one of the biggest roadblocks was actually convincing DOE officials to let them carry out this project. So it was a great experience in stakeholder mapping and a lot of the things that we do here at the Civic Engagement Commission. So they have identified a high school, and they're in the process of making the plan for the next school year. The next project that won was Recycling and Climate Change Project. This was from an organization actually that has never received city funding before. It's a really, really small nonprofit in the Bronx that has 3 staff members, and they're all on a volunteer basis. So this was great. This was a great result of the initiative that we were able to create equity among how community CBOs are funded. This program was a free summer youth program for youth in the Bronx, and that's actually an actual picture of one of the events. They held weekly workshops on recycling, gardening, and learning about urban agriculture. The next project that won third place, Young Musicians in Training. Quest Youth Organization is an actual nonprofit that provides free to low-cost music lessons to youth in Brooklyn. And when the pandemic happened earlier last year, everybody, the youth and the nonprofit were in a standstill on not knowing how to proceed with their activities and for their planned activities for the year. So they actually, encountering this process with the CEC, they came together and developed a proposal that would help them carry out the activities virtually. So they actually had music lessons virtually. They were able to record. They were able to record their lessons, and they're going to make those lessons available on their website for free. So that was a great crew to work with as well. The next project was from South Asian Youth Action. This project was a peer mentoring internship / fellowship. So the organization paired college students with high school students and prepped them for the SATs. They helped them with homework work after school hours, and anything really needed for the application process, which was particularly important for them due to the pandemic and that creating an impact in education for youth. The next project, the last project that won, is the Girls Circle from the Girls Mentor Girls Inc. in the Bronx. This is another organization, really small nonprofit that only has, I think, 2 full-time staff and has never received city funding before. They were able to create a virtual workshops for young girls to address issues of mental health and other setbacks that they're facing because of the current situation. The final project that they put together was actually a multimedia wellness book that's going to serve as a toolbox for teens and young adults. And it will be also available on the website. And that's a culmination of the work that they did for a couple months. That's summary of the amazing work that these organizations and their youth members were able to accomplish in such a short time.
Thanks so much, Daniela. Does anyone have any questions for Daniela? Yeah, Eve.
Hi. That's amazing. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I just wondered how you did outreach. Like, how did you reach out to the groups that you were seeking proposals from?
Yeah, so we partner with Coro New York Leadership for this initiative, and we relied on their outreach as well as our agency partner outreach to do the first gathering, the first planning, the design of the process. And then the more that we met, the more organizations started pulling in their networks and their other organizations that they also do work with. So that's how we were expanding in terms of how we did outreach to get proposals from organizations. organizations. We did the same thing, but we also relied a lot on the Department of Youth and Community Development, DYCD, because they have a long list of providers that they work with, especially youth providers. So that's how we got the bulk of project proposals on our website. And actually, we did surveys afterwards, and we found out that a lot of the organizations heard it from word of mouth. Like the CBOs have sometimes newsletters, and they do e-blasts, and a lot of them put that information in their communications. Yeah.
Did you reach out to Staten Island or Queens? I'm not sure if those two counties were missed.
Yeah, we did. We actually we received a total of 49 project proposals, and they were all from all 5 boroughs.
But out of the 5 that were selected?
Yeah, the 5 that won were the projects that received the most votes. So we really wanted ideally to have representation in all boroughs, but the projects that received the most votes ended up winning the funding.
And did we engage the community boards in reaching out?
We did, yes. We sent information to community boards. We also offered to go to their, if the community board had a youth and education subcommittee, we offered to go and present about the initiative. Yes, Andy took the lead on that, on really getting the word out for the community boards.
Thank you, Daniela.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So just, we're also going to have, in a few minutes, just 1 or 2 minutes, we'll have Yasmani talk about the People's Festival. I just wanted to note that, we have talked to you all about how we are supporting the Task Force for Racial Inclusion and Equity and working in neighborhoods to support coalition building in the 33 neighborhoods that were identified by the city as where there are equity gaps in terms of COVID infection and treatment and vaccines. So we now have 29 organizations that have assumed responsibility to lead their neighborhood coalitions. So the Civic Engagement Commission Young Men's Initiative is working with an MWBE called Bridge Philanthropic Consulting to administer this program with the coalitions. We're still looking for partners, CBO partners in 4 neighborhoods, and so far what we've done is held 3 meetings with these organizations. They've received training early on in ranked choice voting, vaccine outreach, and they've been doing those kinds of activities. They also received training on our platform, on the Decidim Participate platform. And they've been doing really amazing work on the ground, and we're now beginning the process of going through a needs and priority setting process with their coalitions, and that will then be parlayed into a participatory budgeting process that has been given $40,000 per neighborhood to decide how to spend that money in support of the neighborhood and recovery. So that's pretty exciting. We'll continue to keep you updated on that. And then next, I want to give the floor to Yasmani Arboleda, our artist in residence, and he's going to tell you a little bit about the People's Festival. We sent you the media advisory in email and wanted to share some of the work that's been going on in that space.
Hello. Hi. Good afternoon. My name is Yasmani Arboleda. I have the great privilege of being the artist in residence for the Commission of Civic Engagement. As you all know, over the past year, a huge part of my work has really been to understand the dynamics and the work of the agency to really begin to create a storytelling tradition. How do we let the city of New York know that we are here and we're here to collaborate and to partner? And a huge part of the way that I approach that work is by creating narratives that are sticky and sweet. I always think about how is it that we can bring beauty and joy into government, into democracy, to make it sustainable, truly sustainable. When I think about human beings showing up and caring for each other and building sustainable models that transform, I think about the work that we've been doing over the past 6 months. So we took a vehicle from Rikers, a bus from Rikers, and now it's been transformed into the People's Bus. The People's Bus is at the heart of the festival. What the hope is that we actually begun on Friday, on August 20th, in downtown Brooklyn, and we had a really beautiful success. If we go to the next slide, you'll begin to see a little bit of the process of the different elements that we've been building. Maybe it's coming through. We have the People's Fellows, 28 young people that this summer have been collaborating in the decision-making processes that have led to the People's Festival. I don't know if we have the capacity to play this video. It is a video that was created at one of our People's Dinners, and it showcases a song that was written by these young people who have been collaborating and building towards this festival. It's a video invitation towards it. I don't know if... As we're figuring that out, I will share that in each one of our People's Festivals, we're going to be in each borough for one full day. Originally, we were supposed to be starting at 10 a.m., going all the way through to 7 p.m. Our programs include institutional partners. Let's see. Maybe it's working. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Okay. We are, this coming Friday, we will be in Staten Island, near the ferry. On Sunday, we will be in Queens, in Corona Park. The following week, we will be in Washington Heights on Friday, and in Fordham Plaza in the Bronx on Sunday. We are continuing to build our programs, things that we learned on Friday. Many aspects of the festival is really about, people showing up and collaborating and celebrating our resilience. If we go to the next slide, and then maybe 2 slides later, not the video, but the next one. I will share that one of our partners, Mujeres en Movimiento, who is a group of undocumented women who show up at Corona Park to work out together 3 times a week, have been an essential partner of this program. They've actually using materials for the arts beads. In my studio over the past 6 weeks, we built a ceiling that we're now calling the People's Sistine Chapel. It uses more than 8 million beads to create an image of the sun and the sky and the clouds. But when you step back and you see it in the interior of the bus, if we go to the next slide, what you begin to see is this beautiful mosaic that has more than 8 million beads that really represents all New Yorkers. So we were aiming to get to 8.8 million so that it could literally translate. But the idea is that this People's Buzz is a vehicle for transformation and healing. And the way it's being activated, as we saw last Friday, is for people showing up and dancing and singing together. And there's many of our sister agencies, Thrive, focusing on mental health, Democracy NYC, focusing on folks getting registered to vote, really thinking through if the mandate of our agency is to collaborate with other agencies within the city governance, public institutions, private institutions. This festival really embodies all of the relationships that we need to be building to be successful in the work that we do. If we go to the next slide. You can see the ice cream truck of rights, which is another feature of the People's Festival. It literally pairs ice cream flavors that the youth have created names for. I'll give you an example. Stop Rum Raising the Rent is one of our flavors. And the idea is that we're creating jingles and writing music, but all of this is how do we bring democracy and government and have it be embodied, not just in the mind as a logical thing, but in the heart, something we care about and show up to participate in because it's beautiful, because it's exciting. And so some of the photographs really showcase the woman that's in the back of the ice cream truck of rights is Lady Justice. It's our version of Lady Justice, also sketched by one of our young people. Really powerful. I think the work that we're focusing on this week is to really get New Yorkers to find out that this is happening so they can participate. So far, so good. It's been really, really beautiful. I wonder if there's another slide. There is a video, but I think that the videos are not working right now. I highly encourage. Okay, great. Let's see this.
20th, September 5th, in all 5 boroughs.
We're the people's bus, we're the people's bus, we're the children of the people that we represent. We're the people's bus, we're the people's bus, we're the children of the people that we represent. It's the people's park, hear the people sing, standing not across Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens. We're the people's bus, we're the people's bus, we're the children of the people that we represent. We're the people's bus, we're the people's bus, we're the children of the people that we represent. It's the people's park, hear the people sing, standing not across Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens. We're the people's bus, we're the people's bus, we're the people's bus, we're the people's bus. Transformation, we're the people's bus. Education, we're the people's bus. Participation, we're the people's bus. Liberation, we're the people's bus, we're the people's bus, we're the people's bus, we're the people's bus, we're the people's bus.
Yeah, it's been really beautiful, and as you all know, a huge part of this work is to really pilot how we show up in public space, how we transform public space. All of these, in my mind, are experiments in civic engagement. The question that many of our T-shirts have on the front is, what does civic engagement mean to you? And so much of what we're trying to do is really bring these stories and these narratives to our parks, to our public spaces, to our plazas, and say, what does this mean? How do we change this? How would you do it, right? And so my hope is that this is really the People's Festival's the beginning of a long-term program that really celebrates the resilience of all New Yorkers in this moment, but forevermore. How do we create a summer program that really invites us all to reimagine the possibilities of what government looks like and feels like when we're celebrating? So thank you. I don't know if you have any questions. Oh, let's play this video as well. Now that we figured out the hopefully it will work.
What was really great about that song is I think the young people put it together like an hour.
Yeah.
Right?
Literally, they wrote the lyrics, built the beats, and I had them film it right there and then because I thought it was really powerful. Let's see.
Have you heard about the People's Festival?
The People's Festival.
It's ours, all New Yorkers. Están invitando a todos los neoyorquinos,
Each and every one. This summer,
The People's Festival is partnering with cultural, community-based organizations
to celebrate the resilience of all New Yorkers.
in each borough,
Brooklyn,
Staten Island, Queens, Manhattan.
the Bronx. To learn how you, your community, or your organization can be involved in the People's Festival, visit participate.nyc.gov.
Yeah. Any questions?
Yep. Okay, no questions for Yasmani. Yasmani has been a tremendous source of creativity and fun and joy for the agency, and just done an incredible amount of work on the festival, and so has the entire team. And again, as you know, we are a small team, and the addition of the youth fellows has been incredible. Also, for the Tree Coalition space, we're working with youth fellows as well. We had the fortune of also having a couple of interns this summer, so it's really we've been able to do so much more with all these folks to support our work. So thank you so much, Yasmani. Okay, before we go, I'm going to just quickly let you know also, I know that some of the commissioners in the past have raised questions or suggestions about us working with New York City faith communities. So one of the things we did over the summer is that we held a successful event that was called Your Faith, Your Voice, Your City, and it was an event specifically meant to connect to faith communities and religious leaders. And we held this event on July 22nd, and over 60 religious leaders, faith leaders attended that event. And we talked about how faith communities have had an incredibly positive impact on shaping policy and programs in this administration. Everything from the declaration of Eid as a public school holiday, the creation of the Mayor's Clergy Council, the holiday curriculum guides that were developed by Department of Education on Eid, Diwali, Lunar New Year. New York City Department of Education created lesson plans in Sikhism for teachers to implement. The creation of the New York City Center for Faith and Community Partnerships was another entity within city government. Also, NYPD made changes to the uniform policy to allow for turbans and longer beard length. So there have been a bunch of things that have happened in the city as a result of faith communities becoming more engaged. And we wanted to highlight those, and we also did breakout groups with these faith leaders to better understand how they'd interface with some of the work we're doing in community boards and participatory budgeting and language access. Before we go to the next part of the meeting with the Redistricting Commission, I wanted to just note that we're going to be sending you a draft of the annual report that is due in September. And we will be sending it to you in the next week or so, around September 3rd, and we're going to look for your feedback to get edits. This report will need to be voted on before it gets submitted, so the next meeting will need to be in person, and we need to have a quorum so that we can vote on the report and submit it on time to the mayor and the council. So we will stay in touch about that. So for the next part of the meeting, we're going to turn to a presentation by the Redistricting Commission, which is a bipartisan commission responsible for drawing our state's district lines based on the 2020 census. And the Redistricting Commission is committed to public input. And today we have with us a couple of colleagues from the Redistricting Commission. We'll hear a presentation from Karen Blatt and Isis McIntosh Green. Karen Blatt is the co-executive director of the Redistricting Commission, and she spent most of her career, all of her career, working in government. And Isis McIntosh Green is also has been in politics and public service for much of her career, and she is the deputy co-executive director of the commission. So I'd like to invite them both to join us and do a presentation. And yes, you can go to the mic there.
Hi. I've never done this with my mask on, but there's a first time for everything. Thank you, Dr. Saeed. Thank you to the entire CEC. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. We're very excited to be talking to you today about the Independent Redistricting Commission. The commission was designed to bring more transparency to the redistricting process. This is a departure from how it was done in the past, but it's important to understand that this process doesn't work without your help. And we need input from the public about your communities of interest. Where do you live? Where do you send your children to school? Where do you worship? All of this information is important to our commissioners. And they recently completed a virtual listening tour focused on regions throughout the state. There were 10 in total. And all the recordings of the meetings are on our website, on our public YouTube channel. We also received a lot of submissions that were written from the public, and we're going to format them and put them on our website as well for the public to see. We've had some...
Sorry, Karen, we have a couple of commissioners on the phone. If you could just speak just a tiny bit louder. I'm not sure if there's a way to raise the volume on the mic, but thank you so much.
Is that better? Okay.
Yeah, just that's good. Thank you.
Okay, so we just completed our listening tour, and we're going to digest all of the information that we received from the public and draft lines. Now, we had some difficulties because of COVID, and most notably, the data was received very late. We were supposed to receive it in April, but instead it just arrived August 12th. And so we have 1 month to draft lines and release them to the public. So we're working with a very truncated timeline. And once we release these draft lines, we're going to kick off an in-person tour throughout the state. There are going to be 14 meetings in total, and we hope to solicit input from the public. We hope to get your help with that as well. We have 2 offices that we're setting up. One is up in Albany, and one is here at 250 Broadway. We've had some delays with construction, but they should, the Albany office is up and running. The city office will be ready within a couple of weeks. And I have my wonderful staff here, my deputy, Isis McIntosh Green, Director of Public Engagement, Asya Badi, Assistant Director of Engagement, Miranda Goodwin-Rabb, and our data manager, Jonathan Rivas, who could not be with us today in person. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Isis, who will give you a better idea of our timeline and help you understand the process better. And then we'll have some Q&A.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Is it still morning? Oh, just turned afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Isis McIntosh Green, and I am going to share a slide with you today. Perfect. Oh. One moment. Okay, great. So I'll just go ahead and get started, and as the slides come up, then we'll go through it from that way. So of course, you know, the IRC, or the Independent Redistricting Commission, came about actually quite similar to the CEC. It was a voter-approved method that was voted on back in 2014. And so now that we finally were able to get the resources necessary to move forward with this process, proud to say that we are up, fully staffed, and hopefully we'll be moving into our office here in the New York City, actually not too far from here on Broadway at 250 Broadway, very soon. And so I'll come back to the commissioners, but of course it's a 10 commissioner commissionership where we have 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans, and then both houses got the opportunity to be able to appoint someone who is not a member of either of those parties. And so as we go into the redistricting process, the biggest thing that we're trying to communicate is, what is redistricting anyway? So many resources went into the census. And so it even during the pandemic, I know a lot of you, and of course a lot of organizations that you had worked with, partnered with food pantries, partnered with elected officials, and we're really able to try to get the word out about the census. However, the redistricting process is quite different, and while we wish that while that information was going out, that people also understood that the reason why you're doing this is because because the redistricting process is the next step. And a lot of people actually haven't even heard of redistricting. A lot of people do understand that they may have used to belong to a different district, and lines were drawn and redrawn and really was without community input. And so what happened is a lot of communities, unfortunately, I'm from the area of Brooklyn, Central Brooklyn, Brownsville, and so what ended up happening is some communities actually got split up, where you have NYCHA developments that will actually have two different congressional representatives representing them. We have a community like Brownsville that has 4 different senatorial districts that are cut up through there. And so the importance of this process was to ensure that people finally got the opportunity to say, let me communicate what my communities of interest are. Let me be able to say why certain economic zones should actually be in the area, why certain business improvement districts shouldn't be split up, and the challenges that they face by having to unify a community to go to sometimes up to 7 different representatives on just one level of government. And so our hope and what we were able to accomplish over the course of the summer, thankfully through the help of a lot of the public engagement team, which is here with us today, is that the commissioner said, although in the constitutional amendment that was passed, technically they only had to have 1 round of hearings, but those hearings would not have to take place until after they actually drew lines. And so the commissioners got together and said it would be important for them to hear from the community before any lines were drawn, before any line drawing consultants were hired. And this was really the premise that brought us to where we are today. So if you can go to the next slide, I'll just show the timeline. So essentially now where we are, basically summer 2021. Now that the listening tours have happened, we have been able to compile all of that data. Now we're moving forward into our fall. And so by mandate, we have to have our initial draft of the maps released by September 15th. And so what would happen then is we have 30 days to be able to announce to the state of New York where and what the hearing dates are and when the hearings will take place. A lot of the areas that we're looking at are, like Karen said, are 14 different cities throughout the state of New York. Now 12 of those cities are actually constitutionally mandated, but once again, the commissioners thought that it would be important to add 2 additional cities to that, which would be in the area of Southern Tier, which will likely be Binghamton, for those that are trying to figure out that geography when we get into Western New York. And then, of course, last but not least, North Country. And I'll be able to go through all of the cities once I get towards the end of the slides. And so just to show you right now, there's also a ballot proposal that many of you may already be discussing. And what we're trying to once again raise awareness about is while there are going to be 5 statewide ballot measures, one of those ballot measures is related to the Redistricting Commission. If you can go to the next slide. Next one. Thank you. So here I promised that I would share, of course, our commissioners. Our chair is David Imamura, Vice Chair Jack Martins. We also have Eugene Banger, Ross Brady, John Conway III, Dr. Evelise Cuevas Molina, Dr. John Flateau, Elaine Frazier, Charles Nesbitt, and Willis H. Stevens Jr. And so these, they were appointed by the majority leader in both the Senate and the Assembly. And now as we move forward, it's important that they are getting as much public engagement as possible, which is why we're here today. Next slide. And so really, when I talked about how we're trying to get the word out, we already have a number of organizations that are communicating what redistricting looks like and why is it that we once again lost another congressional district. So ever since 1952, we've actually been losing congressional districts. And so back in 1952 was actually the last time that we had 45 congressional members. And I'll show you on my next slide kind of where those congressional districts are being reapportioned across the country. And so as you see, a lot of the movement has been to the west as well as to the south. New York was actually thought by a number of thought leaders and folk who have been in this process for much longer than me, and probably much longer than I've been alive, that New York this time was actually slated to lose 2 congressional seats. So while we feel that we were 89 people short of being able to preserve our 27 congressional members, right now the rest of the country is saying, what was New York doing and how were they so effective to make sure that they didn't lose 2 seats? And so as we see a lot of the trends coming out of the Northeast, it's important that now as we move to the redistricting process that we adjust for our growth and population our growth and population size. Next slide. So let's start off with the ballot measures. So this is the proposal that I was talking about. On the left-hand side, we have the exact language that is going to be on the ballot. So this one is, this proposed constitutional amendment would freeze the number of state senators at 63, amend the process for the counting of states' population, I'm glad I wore my glasses, delete certain provisions that violate the United States Constitution, repeal and amend certain requirements for the appointment of the co-executive directors of the Redistricting Commission, and amend the manner of drawing district lines for congressional and state legislative offices. Shall the proposed amendment be approved? And so in layman's terms, we've broke it down on the right-hand side with more so an explanation of what voting yes or no on this ballot proposal will actually do. So locking in the number of senators, of course right now we already have 63, but by law it was actually 50. And so the House, the Assembly, and the Senate have actually been voting in past years to adjust the number of senators based on the population. So this would actually lock it at 63. As we've seen over just the past 10 years, and I'll show you as we move forward with other slides, that New York State actually had a population increase of over 4%. And so now that's approximately about 863,000 people. So we are adjusting for that. Affirming that the total population will be the basis for the district. Reassignment of prison population. That has been a national conversation on how to actually do that. A lot of times here in New York State, we've done that in the past, but this would actually codify it. Redistricting timeline, which is what I went over with you before. However, what this is going to do is to adjust for the change in primary season. And so essentially what happened is, of course, we had elections back in September. And so the way the redistricting timeline would allow for people to be able to still run and have enough time to file paperwork, etc. However, once we move that back to June to match up with the congressional elections, now we have a period where the actual legislature does not have to sign off on the maps until the middle of January, which, if you guys are probably very well versed within the campaign process, is about 2 to 3 weeks before you actually have to start petitioning. So as we move forward, the last thing is the eliminate the block on border rule, which would require map makers to draw certain blocks into adjacent districts, which a number of folk who have been a part of the redistricting process actually point to that as a reason why a number of senatorial districts across New York State are drawn so funny or weird and seems to gerrymander, if you will. Next slide. So right now our population is officially over 20 million people. We're now at 20,201,249. 39 of our 62 counties actually lost population. And Schoharie County actually had the largest population loss basically by 9.3%. And so 23 of our counties actually saw growth. One is your sister county right across the bridge, which actually saw the largest growth in the state of New York by 9.2%. And so as we see a lot of the urban centers and a lot of our downstate counties picked up that population. Next slide. So this is more in detail on which counties lost population, and this is based on the August 12th U.S. Census data that came out. Thankfully, we got it a week early. Still much later than we had originally anticipated. And so you're able to see the counties with the greatest loss. And so, of course, being in New York City, we see Kings County and Queens County as 2 of the largest growth centers throughout the state of New York. Do we have any questions up to this point about the data that I'm showing or anything?
Have you figured out the population count, let's say, per congressional, state assembly, and Senate yet?
So
you're going to have to draw your lines based on the population count, and you have to come to a number.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you so much for bringing that up. I'm not sure if it's on the next slide, but let's go to the next slide. However, I know in the congressional district, that number is 776,971 people. So that's actually up from approximately 716,000, which was the number that in the 2010 census that we came out with the 27 congressional districts. So on top of a lot of the movement that is happening within the state of New York, you have some congressional districts that either lost population from that 716,000 number, and we have other congressional districts, few, but still other congressional districts that are actually surpassed the 776,971 number that I quoted. So essentially, we have about 60,000 people that have to be added to each congressional district. So sometimes I know that the golden question that we get when we speak to organizations or we speak to people is, well, whose congressional seat is going to be eliminated? And the answer that I like to give is, well, no one congressional seat is just going to be eliminated. Essentially, it's going to have to engulf that population. And so we're going to have to look back at what are the numbers and how do we make sure, because of course, on the congressional level, there's no population deviation. So we don't have the opportunity to say, you know, some areas are going to have a higher percentage and other areas are going to have a lower, like that flexibility that had existed within the state legislature. And so these are just cities that had the largest cities in New York State, but also the population change as well. You can go to the next slide. This is now when we're getting into our public listening tour. This is our participation rates for each county and each area within New York State that we had these virtual hearings. A lot of times what we were able to find out is the biggest drop off in the numbers was just confusion about the process. So a number of people believed that they had to sign up in order to actually watch the hearing, but all of our hearings are streamed live on both our website, our YouTube page, and our Facebook. And they're also archived there as well if you want to go back and see it. There are also questions that we receive about transcripts. Our transcripts will actually be posted within the next week, so people have the ability to, whether it's do their qualitative analysis based on the transcripts or just see really what was the content of what folk were saying. And a lot of times it's a lot easier for them to compile that written down as opposed to watching through some of these hearings again. One of the counties that had the largest turnout was Queens County. We had 107 people signed up and 51 speakers. We also had a large percentage as you go through with the Kings and Richmond County. Most of that population that did come out for that was Kings County. However, Richmond County also gave their communities of interest and then folk that did not actually present. Some people actually also submitted a written testimony on our website, which is also going live this week. So you'll be able to decipher, you know, where are the communities of interest based on the folk that responded. Last slide. Oh. So now I get back to the public hearing locations that I promised that we would talk about. So these are the 14 cities where the public hearings will be. More than likely they will take place during the time of October and November, just because once that data is released, those maps are released, we have to notify people and give them 30 days in order to come out. So that's really when we need everyone, I'll just say, as my mom would say, all hands on deck. At that point, think of the initial map drawing process as just what I said, initial. I don't think that it's the time to say, well, what is this? You know, this is the problem with the system. These are the problem with line drawing. This didn't work. This is the time when we need the community to come out and say, yes, these communities of interest belong together, or no, this community needs to be added in. We need to come up with another scenario. How can we make this work? A lot of the times, unfortunately, I'm a graduate of Binghamton University, so I've spent my fair share of time in the Southern Tier area. And so a lot of the issues that we heard when we were not even just in the Southern Tier region, but when we were in upstate New York going near Erie County, is people felt that the congressional districts were made to favor incumbents and unfortunately split communities right down the middle, where a lot of the places where they shop are actually completely different places from where they have their livelihoods, and essentially different places from where they have to advocate. Another community also talked about a district being over 100 miles long, and so having to just try to get the resources to get to a congressional member, or even to get to a state assembly or state senate member, really took a lot of effort. And as a person who thankfully was able to benefit from the online process, a lot of districts and a lot of communities don't have the resources to keep up with that process. Now that we're starting to see a shift in funding, broadband access, etc., people need that in-person contact in order to get their issues heard. And so that's why all of our hearings will have a in-person as well as a virtual component. We are taking, of course, a close look at what's going on with the Delta variant. And of course, since we are a commission, chartered by the state of New York, we will, of course, be listening to what the governor advises in regard to, how many people in a room, whether we're going to continue to mask mandate, if we can do that, if we can allow vaccinations. So all of that is going into this. And so the 12 cities that we have on the left are the ones that were mandated by the actual constitutional amendment, and then the 2 on the right are the ones that the commissioners added in. And I do believe that is the end of the presentation. If you all have any questions for either myself, Karen, or members of our staff, we just thank you for allowing us to be here with you today.
If I could, just to recap, I know you said the Senate, state Senate, is going to go from 50 to 63 members.
Let me clarify. There are already 63 senators. So that number, we're just codifying that it is locked at 63. So for instance, we just saw an increase of 863,000 people in our state. Technically, the way Senate districts are drawn right now, Senate districts hover somewhere around 300.
I'm looking at the number. So, and the assembly will remain the same, and you'll codify.
Yes,
that
it was already. That was already codified. It was already locked in at 150.
So, just give me a brief idea of the timeline, without the particulars, of when the maps are being drawn, when they're being presented, the hearings, and then the certifications of that has to be mid-January. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then petitioning is going out within a few weeks thereafter.
Correct.
For the election in June.
Correct.
Okay. What is going to prevent a delay if people are going to challenge it in court? And is there enough time to defend it prior to having to go through the petitions in January?
Excellent questions. You clearly know that this is a litigious process. We don't know. We don't know what delays could result. We'll have to wait and see.
But is there any provision to delay? I mean, State Board of Elections has to delay petitions if the maps are not certified and the district lines are not certified. So you have a constitutional date that you must get this implemented?
I believe it's January 15th that the legislature will vote, and then we have, if they reject our plans, we have another month to come back with a new set of plans by February 15th.
And that would delay the petitions and possibly impact the June election. So I'm asking, is there any way to move up the calendar to get the information out so you can have a discussion in the communities to avoid that kind of a delay?
The ballot measure will move it up 2 weeks to January 1st. Right.
And If I can just add, that was the reason why the legislature also put that ballot measure. It was to not only give us more time, but so that way in future processes, this doesn't happen. So it actually moves up the timeline in future redistricting processes to November. They have to have the map certified. They provide it to the legislature in a bill by November 1st. If one of the houses actually votes it down, then they have until November 15th to come back. And so the timeline that we're working with now is the January one. And thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Other questions? Donna, Mark?
No. I didn't have a question, really. I have a comment. I saw that Manhattan didn't really turn out when it was Manhattan and the Bronx for the hearing, but I want you to know that the notice came out very late, so that was a problem. So that may be. So when you have these public hearings, I think the timing in which you get the information out to the public is very important to have participation in the process, because when I got the information, it was already done. So, and I felt like, okay, so I will go to the public hearing because that will be my next time to engage with you guys. But that next time would also have the maps, which would not, may or may not have things that I was concerned with prior to the maps being drawn. So that's on my only concern. Just
definitely, and we agree with you wholeheartedly. By the time that the commission really received the funding to be able to move forward, we were already now basically looking at June and July. And so what we wanted to do, and so if you go, actually you don't have to go to any slide. Actually, if you go back to the last slide, one thing that the commissioners actually decided to do as well, just with that in mind, was to have a statewide hearing, a catch-all, if you will. So that was actually the only one that took place on a weekend. It took place on Sunday at 3 p.m. That was also when we had 43 speakers and 92 sign up. So we know that a lot of the folk were excited. We had people that were actually about to go into a wedding that did the hearing from their car. And so it's definitely an important thing. And so I guess that's also the reason why they put in the constitutional amendment to provide 30 days notice before the hearings that we're doing in September, right? And so this was really a learning process for everyone because once again, the only thing that I say that is different between the Independent Redistricting Commission and a lot of other chartered, or voter approved commissions is that we really can't have much conversation, if any at all, with the state legislature. And so, for instance, I will draw your attention maybe, and I used to work for a state legislature, which is why I know this, in regard to census mailings that went out. On every mailing that went out, it was almost like you had a census sticker, something bringing attention to the census. However, we can't have that communication. And so we're coming up with creative ways, and our lovely public engagement team are coming up with strategic ways. A number of them have worked with other members. A number of them have worked with the census process, and we're really trying to get into the community and have them sign up. If you go to the first slide, we do have all of our contact information in regard to how do we get the public involved in the process. And the biggest thing we'll say is please sign up on our website. That's that nyirc.gov, because that is how you'll get the communication on time when we send it out, right? We have had a number of conversations with cities, with town councils, with U.S. senators on how they can help disseminate the information. But of course, people, they vacation as well. And so what we're trying to do is make sure that you don't have that breakdown in communication of by the time I get it to your office, you have it for a week before you realize that you can do something with it. And so once again, at the end of this process, the commissioners have decided that they will do a catch-all. Of course, we want everyone to participate in their in-person hearings so that way we can get as much data and quite frankly, they can begin to disseminate and compile all of this information before they have to once again send it back to the legislature, which I believe will probably, that initial one is in November.
I just want to add that we can receive written submissions at any time. If you email them to submissions@nyirc.gov, Asia and Miranda will receive it. We can also receive geographic files. If anyone wants to send us a map of their community or a plan, we can receive those as well. We can also convert a PDF map or a hand-drawn map into a geographic file. Our very talented data manager, Jonathan Rivas, will handle that.
Thank you.
Mark?
Go ahead, Mark.
Thanks. I am one of those folks from Manhattan who did manage to testify, and the way I got the word was from my congressman's office. Happened to reach out to me to say, why don't you put something in? That was the only point of contact for me, so clearly we all need to do a little better for that. I'm hoping that PDF maps easily in versions that can be, and believe me when I tell you I'm not the guy who knows how to do this, I just know that it can be done, that there's a version that's better for Twitter, then there's one for email, and there's one for Instagram and perhaps other platforms as well. So if those can be provided, and Miranda and I are colleagues on the same community board, so I think that we will be easily in touch on that score. I am concerned about a couple of things that were mentioned in the process, so just to highlight them real quickly. One is the idea that on average we're going to be adding 60,000 residents to a congressional district, and yet your slides reveal that some of our congressional districts already gained population. So the notion that equality would add 60,000 to every district would not bring equity to the over and underrepresented communities. And this is not abstract for me. I am one of those communities where the bulk of my state Senate district is in the Bronx. And they should have an undiluted state senator whose only focus is on their issues and not some completely very different, probably all the same goals, but very different challenges between different communities of interest. The Columbus Avenue Business Improvement District, in order to engage its state representatives, has to talk to 5 people, 3 state assembly members and 2 state senators, and that's only because if they went 1 block further, it would be a 3rd state senator. It's a little loony in our neighborhood, and so this is very important that we get this right and not divide integral units,
Yes.
and at the same time not deprive integral units of having an unfettered and complete voice in the way in which their challenges need to be met.
Yeah, that's exactly the kind of information we're looking for. Thank you.
If I may, I've been involved in this process decades ago, drawing the lines, and I commend you for the optimism that you have in trying to make this thing work, particularly what Mark said. We have a story in our paper, in our Brooklyn paper, that shows a street in Sunset Park that will be divided down the middle, which is not uncommon in drawing lines. You mentioned about NYCHA and having a section of a NYCHA's housing divided between districts. It's unavoidable. Let's be practical here. It's going to happen because you just have so few districts and so many people to divide. And I don't know how you're going to create what I would like to have done, a coterminality. When they drew community boards, they were very conscious of keeping neighborhoods together within a geographic boundary, whether it be a park, a river, or whatever it may be, or a particular roadway. I don't know how, and being politically practical, you will never be able to fix that. You will never be able to eliminate divisions of neighborhoods, communities, business districts, whatever it may be. So you have to explain that, because that's where you're going to run into the legal challenges that are going to happen when you do this. It will be unconstitutional from a right to vote, to have representation, to have a building divided, or a community of certain ethnic population divided, and that's where you're going to get into trouble. And being overly optimistic in some of your presentations today, to be able to explain that, okay, is going to be very difficult. And if you can figure out how to divide and be creative in your maps along those natural boundaries, it's easier upstate. It's harder to do it in the urban areas here in New York City. And unfortunately, you know, we've had congressional districts that run 3 counties downstate. You know, let alone upstate where you have 100 miles between, you know, communities. So I don't know how you're going to avoid that, you know, to make some sense of it, that you're going to avoid the challenges that I expect will come.
Could I add something to that? Because Michael raises a really interesting and very good point, and it brings me to something that I think is relevant to what we do here as well. And that is that if it is inevitable, and it may well be, I defer to your better experience with it, if it is inevitable that some integrated unit is going to have to be chipped away at or split in half, that raises the issue of what priority should the commission be putting on who stays together and who has to sort of go into separate parts. And because it came up, the notion that we split NYCHA communities in half as opposed to a community like mine, which, let's face it, the Upper West Side of Manhattan doesn't have a whole lot of problem getting heard by its elected officials. In NYCHA communities, you want to make sure that the folks who work really hard to give voice to those very real concerns are not further diluted. So that's just my personal view. The larger and perhaps more policy-oriented view is, if there is going to be division of what would otherwise be units kept together, some core principle of priority ought to be established to guide the work, other than incumbents getting to stay in their district.
Yeah. Mark, you're 100% on the mark on this, but the problem is it's politics. You know, first they're going to save every incumbent they can, and it comes down to how many Democrats and Republicans and registered voters are going to be in that district, as opposed to population in that district. And by having an independent commission try to do this, as opposed to the way it was done before in a closed room by a couple of political leaders, and the Assembly wants to protect theirs and the Senate wants to protect theirs, you know, your task is enormous. And I'm still challenged to figure out how you're going to avoid the legal, you know, cases that will come before you.
Thank you so much, Commissioners. And thank you to the Redistricting Commission for having this conversation with us, for the presentation. And I think that it's really exciting, you know, from a Civic Engagement Commission point of view, to have this be like a more public process, to have the public engage in it. And undoubtedly, I mean, we ourselves are finding that when you have public conversations, there is going to be disagreement, there is going to be dissent, there is going to be, you know, legal challenges, and like, I think that's part of how we are, steps in the process of how we're reclaiming democracy and not doing things behind closed doors, and it is going to be uphill. So we're grateful for the time that you're putting into this, and really look forward to seeing what happens in the story.
Thank you.
Sarah,
thank you so much.
I have one.
Oh, you have
Are
another.
the slides going to be available to us, your presentation?
Will we share the deck?
So I shared it with Francis, so I'll make sure, of course, that she
we'll get it out to folks.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for taking the time, all of you. So in the final part of our meeting, we do have a public comment period. So I understand that there is someone who has signed up to speak. The person's name is Tobias Walls. So if you could please go to the mic and offer your comment, that'd be great. And I'm sorry if I said your name incorrectly.
Good afternoon. My name is Tobias. I have a nonprofit organization called No Garbage Left Behind Act, Inc. I have a nonprofit organization called No Garbage Left Behind Act, Inc. I also was a part of complaints that was going to the Brooklyn Borough President Office, which is Eric Adams. And every time something that happens, like dealing with debris of Department of Transportation or any garbage that's excessive in areas, that I go and clean up. Unfortunately, a lot of complaints have been going on, and I continue to go out there and do it, and it seems like that I'm not being, nobody's assisting me in it with the tools and the locations and stuff. But my main purpose of this, excuse me, because I have, my main purpose, right, is that I had self-funded this nonprofit organization because I seen that it was excessive garbage in the areas. They have curbside garbage. I know some of y'all familiar with curbside garbage, and when you get out your car, you step into waste and all that stuff. So I also noticed that a lot of individuals that was in the neighborhood, they wanted to work. They standing by train stations, asking for dollars and stuff like that. I self-funded my money and came out, and I said, let me go around to Broadway Junction, which is in Bronxville, and all areas, and pick these guys up and help them pick up garbage. I gave them $20 a piece. A lot of guys lived around the area. They separated themselves from other project areas and other areas, and they wouldn't get into like conflict. So I kept them in the jurisdiction areas where they lived at, like in Howard project areas, Fort Greene, where they actually clean up in these areas right inside the projects. Like, you have the parking lot in NYCHA where they have all kind of garbage all in the area under these cars, and some of the cars would be banded. What we did, we went under there and we cleaned up all that out there. And all the other garbage areas that's in Broadway Junction area, there's so much garbage over there. We actually tag it. So these dumping areas where they have some people that come in from other areas or counties, they're coming and they're dumping their garbage right in the areas where the transportation areas that were Broadway Junction at. If you can go over there and you'll see so many garbage over there. So what I did, I go over there and we had rent out first a U-Haul, and we used to go over there and pick up the garbage. Unfortunately, my funding wasn't right so much. I couldn't do it all the time. So I tried to at least see some garbage that was on the floor and bag it up and get bags and bag it up and stuff like that. But my whole concept of this is that I wanted to create just like a DoorDash. What I wanted to do in the different jurisdiction areas, like you have like Bronxville, East New York, Manhattan, and etc., where individuals can work right there on a block. They can come out, they get trained, they have tools, other equipment, and they can actually clean up right there on the block across the street. They have a before and after picture, which they have a portal. They can go in there and it show, their work of activity for that day. And it also separates individuals from areas where, even though they work for this company or whatever, or they'll stay in that area, they won't be working in these other areas where, it's gang activity these days. So we don't want them to be like mingling together to them to hurt one another. So they can just concentrate on their own neighborhood and clean up their own neighborhood. But the main thing about it is that when I did this, a lot of individuals started to have a relationship with one another. And it reversed a behavior type of thing, a concept of being civilized. So when they started to clean up, they started to engage in other things and activities, working together and stuff like that. So I wanted to make it a program, and then I also seen that it was also stopping, the prison prevention thing where brothers wanted to help other brothers, or other sisters or anybody, individuals to actually work and engage together to paint on walls. We created a board where we wanted to deal with abandoned lots that's all around New York City where it's not being used, and we wanted to use it as a safe spot, for individuals to do creativity. And when I went over there, I seen a lot of rats and rodents and bags over there. I said, whoa, what is the city doing about these? And they said, when I called up to HPDA, they told me that these particular areas was landmarked already, and that these construction and development companies going to be building something on it in 5 or 10 years. And I said, well, whoa, you have a lot of rats coming out of here and you have people dumping these bags and garbage everywhere. What can I do about it? They said, oh no, we can try to get you to lawnmower and cut the grass over there. But I kept going in Action PDA and AGPDA, and they would still not relate to me. I went to also in the area of Commissioner, I think she was a Latrice Walker area, and I think she's a commissioner or somewhere, assemblywoman, and Alika Samuels, I think she's a councilwoman. I also brought that to attention as well, and I'm on deaf ears right now. So I'm starting out the program, and my whole main thing is just to to beautify the neighborhood, but also to bring entertainment in the neighborhood as well. Instead of having Brooklyn going out, we have so much open lots and lands all over the place over there, and it's rodents and all kind of stuff all over the place. So my whole main concern was just trying to change the dynamics of it, and also bringing the summer youth program back, where kids can also get money and clean up in their own area, and the moms don't have to worry about it, grandmoms don't have to worry about it, where they can have some type of independence, what I'm saying, for them to be ready for the future. So any questions,
So thanks very much. There are a couple of organizations that it might be useful for you to be in touch with if you're not already. One is the Goddard Riverside Greenkeepers, where they actually get grant funding to hire folks to do cleanup on streets of the type that you seem to be suggesting. And of course the Doe Fund is the famous one that does that. There's also a new one that started off being a grassroots kind of organization that cleaned up. It's called One Block, because the idea was that volunteers would just promise to keep up one block of their neighborhood, and if you get enough people on every block, then suddenly you got the neighborhood covered, which has now been branching out to hire folks as well. So their experience may be helpful to you in terms of how they got the funding they needed to expand the program to a critical mass. I'll give you my name and my email address, and then maybe I can help connect you to some of those folks if that would be useful to you. You know, one chat with them, you'll decide for yourself whether it's useful, but it might be in the next thing. In terms of vacant lots, since we're here in the office of the Comptroller's office has been among the leaders saying maybe those vacant lots should be turned into affordable housing. So you putting pressure on folks who are not happy with lots staying vacant might not be the worst thing in the world either. Thanks very much for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for presenting today, and we can stay in touch with Mark. I was also wondering, are you connected with the community boards? Are you talking with community boards?
Yes, I had talked to I don't remember the name, but also was my concern that also they not putting even commercials or any awareness pertaining to the trash and the epidemic that's going on in our neighborhoods as rats and all that. There's no awareness on trains, so I actually got stickers and put no dumping and no littering all around New York. So if I see dumping sites where people have bags, I actually stick it and say no dumping. I've been doing that for quite a while. So, I mean, there's no commercials, there's no business, there's none on trains, there's nowhere else. I actually don't see nothing where it says no dumping. So that's very faded away.
Are you familiar with the Cleanup Corps program?
Yes, I am.
So have you alerted them to the locations that you're concerned about?
No, I haven't alerted them. I actually took initiative to do it myself.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much for everything you're doing, and we can stay in touch with you.
All right, no problem.
Talk more. Yeah.
Thank you, and I appreciate it.
All right, thank you. So I think we don't have any other public comment, right? So I think we're at the end of our time together, and we do not need to make a motion to adjourn the meeting since we do not have a quorum. So appreciate everyone again for being here today, and we will look to connect with you in the next meeting that we have at the end of September. Thank you, everyone.
You worked with Helen, didn't you? Yeah.